I'm the manager of women rights and gender equity at ActionAid Bangladesh, and I joined very recently. I have a long development career as a project design specialist in different organizations for about 10 years. It was interesting what the speaker right before me was talking about, because we finished our International Women's Day event. We organized that yesterday. And a day before yesterday, on the 6th, we organized that. And our topic was innovation and women in science, technology, engineering, and math. We wanted to, for a change, kind of align ourselves with, if you know that currently the CSW 67th session of the CSW is going on, and their priority theme this year is innovation and technological change and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. And we aligned our International Women's Day event theme with that, and wanted to given that IWT is a celebratory event, we wanted to celebrate those in our country who have broken the, risen above the challenge and achieved great heights, and at the same time bring focus to the issues that create that disparity. Because we know that in STEM, that it's a global issue. It's not just a Bangladeshi issue. Even highly developed countries face this. But of course, it's a much bigger challenge in countries like ours, where impoverished resources are limited. Even men find it difficult to get enough support to build a career in STEM areas. It's very limited. So there are biases built within our socioeconomic fabric that go against women coming into these careers and then staying on track in these careers, let alone reach certain heights. So we had an interesting panel of scientists in our event who we brought together to start that conversation on what were the challenges that they faced, and how, what made them still choose a career in this area and continue to persevere and reach the heights that they did, and what would be their advice in terms of changes in policy area, or anything that any other stakeholder can do to improve the situation of women and girls. And so it was an interesting conversation. We had the likes of Dr. Firdaus Kadri, who we all know is an amazing scientist, very senior. We had Dr. Lafifa Jamal, who's a professor of mechatronics and engineering, robotic and mechatronics engineering. She's been leading our in the robotics team for the last few years to the Olympiad, the robotics Olympiad, and we've been winning gold medals consistently. And the team has now shifted to become overwhelmingly girls. So that was a huge success story, and we wanted to highlight that. We even made a cartoon strip to kind of, encapsulate that success, and that's actually gone onto our ActionAid website today, or it'll go on tomorrow probably. We built 3 cartoon strips, so you please keep an eye on the ActionAid Bangladesh Facebook page for these interesting strips that we've made. So she was there, and then we had Dr. Nova Ahmed, who did an interesting research actually. She's a computer science professor from North-South University, but she has actually done a bit of research on onto what are the barriers at every level. Like, she saw that at the primary level education, up onto secondary level education, the ratio of girls and boys are pretty much consistent. But after that, why the gap persists and why the the difference starts. And she did a little bit of a survey with a team to ask those questions. So there were a lot of socioeconomic findings that came up, and she made a little presentation on that, and that was very interesting as well. So we had an interesting conversation on that, and it did seem like, of course, the root of the problem is our socioeconomic fabric. First, that needs to change, but at the same time, there are institutional issues that we need to address. So that was our International Women's Day in a nutshell. So what Atia Amin just said kind of reflects whatever our findings were at the panel, out of the panel discussion. So, there were other things that came about. It's just there was just so much of an interesting discussion. We had a veterinarian who's been Dr. Salma Sultana. She's been listed as among the top 100 scientists of Asia. And I don't know if everyone knows this fact, but the three top Bangladeshi scientists who have been listed in that list recently are all women. So, that includes Dr. Firdaus Qadri, her, and another person whose name I forget, I apologize, from Buet. She's, I think, from engineering, who've been listed in that. So she was also present, and it's what we often don't make the connection is that science also has a great impact in what kind of social issues we address, or our socioeconomic issues, the poverty issues, that the development issues that we work on. Dr. Salma actually was an example of, a translation of that. She's a trained veterinarian who started her own project, and her research kind of had to deal with addressing livestock raising by women in the rural areas. And given that it's, we're an agrarian country, it's a major thing, which, and these are things that we often in the development sector and the government tries to work on, whenever working on agricultural issues and development issues. So scientists also have a major role in the leadership, in the direction, in coming up with innovative solutions, often simple, that address some of the issues, the problem solving that we are trying to constantly work on. And so that connection is something that we often overlook. So that was another thing that we kind of touched upon. So, it's been an interesting conversation and an interesting change of direction from the usual topics that we discuss when it comes to Women's Day, or like in my day-to-day job as a women rights and gender rights activist, or development professional or specialist, whatever you might say. So it was a refreshing change of pace. But I know that this is a global conversation that's coming up. We know that this year's UN theme was also about innovation and technological change, because I guess the technological sector has two implications. One is that, first of all, the digital arena, or the digital technology, the access to it has, it's more agile, it's more accessible in terms of bringing about change in a woman's career, education, life, or also it's a more adaptable or more accessible per se sector in terms of forming a career in. So there are two dimensions to it. So that in itself kind of warrants its own segment as a discussion. So we even had a discussion on that area, because access to technology is unequal in our country as well. And that warrants definitely something, a strong policy, a strong policy look into it to change that scenario. And we also, given that ActionAid Bangladesh leads the advocacy on women's safety in the cyberspace, since we've done back-to-back research on this issue, and we've led the conversation on this issue. We've also touched upon that. We had among our panelists Assistant Commissioner of Police Suranjana Shaha. She leads the cybersecurity team in Dhaka Metropolitan Police, and we brought her in to kind of highlight that aspect. She's actually, it was interesting because she's a scientist turned a police officer. She was a physicist who worked at the Atomic Energy Institute in Bangladesh. Then she changed career to become a police officer, and now she works in the cybersecurity area. And she gave us in her discussion, she gave us an example of once addressing a cybersecurity complaint where it was I guess, student from Dhaka University who was about to go abroad, pursue her higher studies. She had a scholarship and everything. And at that exact time, somebody had morphed her picture and put it in some adult website. And in doing that investigation, they found out it was one of her peers, actually a friend of hers who was a year or two senior to her, who was jilted by her. And again, he was also a brilliant student like her, and had a promising career ahead of him. So that was an interesting perspective that she brought in. And she said that she highlighted the importance of how much stress it was causing this woman in pursuing her work, her whatever was lying ahead of her, the emotional distress that it caused her. It took away from, obviously it took away from her focusing on pursuing her, on whatever her tasks were in front of her. And she was just surprised that it was someone that, I think cybersecurity issues or cyber violence against women, online violence against women can come from any form, from anybody. And she was surprised that it was somebody equally brilliant, equally promising, and a peer that it was coming from. So again, that also, that's a conversation on accessibility, because often these things, maybe not in the urban sector as much. In our findings, we have found that online violence and cybersecurity is an issue of accessibility also, because often it hinders women. It makes women, and young girls especially, to take a back step towards using online platforms for their improvement, self-improvement, or pursuing their career. And given that we're heavily dependent on the digital technology platforms for many things now, especially in the post-COVID era, including education. So it's a great it's an issue that needs to be addressed if we want to fully address accessibility. So those were the things I guess I wanted to highlight. I don't have much more to add. And again, I'm grateful to be part of this forum.